Hi, everyone. It's good to see you. And I'm Arthur Slade. I'm a writer from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about writing beginnings, because that's the most important part. Well, there's all sorts of important parts when you're writing a short story or you're writing a novel, but the beginning is the real hook. And one of the things that always comes back to my mind whenever I'm starting a beginning is I'm reminded of a writer friend of mine, Lois Simi, who many years ago, she said, Art, if you're going to write a beginning, make sure it's a real hook. Make sure when people pick up your book in a bookstore and they've got all these other books all around them, that they read that first sentence and they go, wow, I have to absolutely buy this book. So that's kind of my goal. That's what I'm thinking. I want people to almost immediately be interested in the story and think, I'm going to take money out of my pocket or a credit card and buy this book. That's the idea. So I'm going to read a couple of beginnings from some of my novels and kind of explain what I was thinking behind them as I was writing them, and actually, more importantly, as I was rewriting them. Because, of course, in the whole process of the first time I do a first draft, it's not always the best. But when I'm doing the second and third and fourth and fifth and sixth drafts, that's when I'm figuring out exactly how is this beginning going to work. And I should say, sometimes I don't actually find the right beginning until I'm much further in the process of writing the novel. I just kind of put some gobbledygook down and go, okay, this is how it starts. And later on, make that all kind of correct and perfect. So that said, I am going to read from my very first book that was published. And it's all three of the books in the series called Northern Frights are all collected in this book. And the first book was called Draugr, which means ghost or someone who comes back from the dead. It's an Icelandic word. And these are kind of horror, suspense, action novels. So I wanted to make sure that I got people's attention right away. So the moment they read it, they were into the story. Grandpa was going to murder us. Not with an axe, not with a shovel, but with words. Sarah, sit down, Grandpa said softly to me. I haven't even started my story. But I'm scared already. I'm young, I'm 14, and I have my limits. His last tale ended with a headless woman searching through the streets for her head every Halloween. I wasn't going to sleep tonight. Why did Mom and Dad send me here every summer? So that first line is kind of frightening, and it could go in all sorts of different directions. I mean, this could be a really horrible story. Grandpa was going to murder us. That gets people surprised. They're right away, they read it and they go, oh, what's going to happen next? And then I'm kind of playing a trick on them. I'm going, not with an axe, not with a shovel, but with words. And so people are thinking, oh, this is the worst. This is the worst. I shouldn't read anymore. This is going to be horrible. And then they realize that I was actually kind of playing a joke, that it's with words, that he's telling them stories that are so scary that they are going to die of fright. And of course, that's the feeling that I want people to get when they start reading a novel. This is going to be such a scary book that they're going to, well, I don't want people to die of fright, but I want them to feel fright. So that was kind of what I was thinking when I was writing those those first couple sentences. I really wanted to pull people into the world. I wanted to let them know that it was going to be scary. So that's what was going on there. Another book of mine is a book called Dust, and that book, it's a suspense novel too, but I had a different idea for the beginning. The Draugr book that I just read from, I wanted people to be in the story and be scared right away. But with Dust, I really wanted to slowly draw them into the story so they don't even really know for sure whether it's going to be a scary story. And then bit by bit, I add little details that make it more and more scary. But if I read the beginning to you, you might think this is just a normal little prairie story. Matthew Steelgate had 5 cents in his pocket and a yearning for chewing gum and licorice. He wasn't sure which he wanted most, but knew he could buy both and have at least a penny left over. He walked along the edge of the grid road, 3 miles from his family's farm, and about 2 miles from Horseshoe. The sky was cloudless. The sun had shifted nearer to the earth in the last half hour, so near that the air crackled with heat. Matthew followed his mother's bidding, had worn a straw hat. Like his father, his neck was tan brown, along with his face, hands, and forearms to the line where he rolled up his sleeves. So that's actually a very gentle beginning, right? It's just a story of Matthew, this young boy who only has 5 cents in his pocket, and he wants to buy chewing gum or licorice. Now, I don't tell people what time period it's set in. I mean, you can kind of tell. The book is called Dust, and you can kind of tell that it's set in the past. But the fact that he has 5 cents and he can buy those two things, that indicates that this is set in the past, and it's probably set in the 20s or 30s when things were much cheaper. And all I really want to do is kind of get people into believing that the story is real, that the character is real, and that the history is real too. And so that as I gradually add the supernatural and scary elements, they start to believe that those are real also. That's my intention. And so that's why I don't start out with, Matthew's going to get attacked by a whole bunch of velociraptors. Well, that wouldn't really work. But something, how about scary gophers? I didn't want to start out with that with a big bang. I wanted to gradually lead people in so that they gradually get the story is kind of weaving around them, almost hypnotizing them. And then you start hitting them with the little bits of information that let them feel creepier and creepier. And I like those kind of stories too. I like the fast kind of action-paced stories that have horror in them. But this story, I really wanted it to be much more gentle kind of little beginning where you might even read this and think, oh, this is a boring novel, and not know that it's actually about a small town in the dirty 30s where it hasn't rained for almost 10 years. And this rainmaker comes to town and he promises rain, and he's actually a supernatural rainmaker. And it does start to rain, except the children start to disappear one by one. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm gradually bringing people into the story. That's why I start out slow like that. The third and final book I'll read from is actually my latest book, and it's called Dragon Assassin. So even the title, you can kind of tell that there's a lot going on in this book. There's a dragon and an assassin, and actually it's an assassin right there riding the dragon. So, there's going to be action. That's what this book promises just from the title alone. And so when I sat down to write it, that's what I wanted people to feel. I wanted them to feel like this was going to be a roller coaster ride right from the beginning, or a dragon roller coaster ride. And that's kind of what I was hoping to get across, that kind of sense of adventure, but also of danger. And sometimes there's nothing more dangerous than fighting against your brother in a sword fight. Chapter 1, An Eye for an Eye. I lost my left eye during blades training at assassin school. My twin brother did the deed using a clever feint and a quick crosswise cut that caught me by surprise. Well, Carmen, that'll leave a scar, Corman had said. Then he'd laughed, that snorty, snotty laugh that had grated on my nerves 1,000 times since childhood. My vision had been too blurry to aim a cutting blow at him, and I wasn't certain if I even wanted to. He was the only family I had, and despite his laughter, he may not have known how deep the wound was. He often made a silly joke when he'd done something stupid. But when I stumbled and fell toward the floor, Corman dropped his blade and caught me. "Ah, sorry, sis," he said, holding me against his chest. Then the healers rushed in with their bandages and salves and led me to the healing room. Maester Alicius, my master, soon brought the bad news. You will lose that eye, Carmen. So that's a really active beginning. And it's not a frightening beginning in the sense I didn't want to tell a horror story. It's frightening in the sense that here she is just having a practice fight with her brother and she ends up losing an eye. But it's also showing you how dangerous the world is that they live in. That here they are even practicing and bad things can happen. And on top of that, it's showing you the relationship between the brother and the sister. He's kind of one of those, all full of bravado kind of guys and doesn't really realize perhaps what he's done. So when I wrote that, I wanted to pull people into the story right away. I wanted them to believe that this is a young assassin who is training, and that she's training with her brother, and that it's a dangerous world, and that it's a fantasy world where assassins like this can end up riding on dragons. So really my purpose was at the very start there was to make it more active, to make something really exciting happen at the start, and then put people in, once they have that exciting thing happening, which is that little sword fight, then they're in the story and I'm able to give them a bit more information about the world that my characters are living in. So Those are 3 examples of how you can start a story, and you can start it with kind of a scary sentence, or you could start it with kind of slowly draw people in, or with something really active that really gets them excited about this, what the story is going to be about. So thank you very much for listening, and I hope you have a great time with your own writing and writing your own beginnings.